He represents the mitten by way of Penn State. When Chapman gets to talking sports, the people can't wait. He represents the mitten. Be a true EMU, but cut Dennis in the fall, and his veins bleeding blue. They got respect around the state. When that light turns red, so don't sleep on these dudes. Just invite your friends to cut your nap short and tip your cap for and sit back for the Fith chapter. Brian Chapman. Dennis Fithian. When they open their mouths, they spit in the facts, bro. This ain't even optional, man. You just have to tune into YouTube to watch the broadcast or download it to your phone to peep the podcast. They mix laughter, they get after. It's all captured in the Fith chapter. That's right, and welcome to the Fith chapter. I am Brian Chapman, and there is no Dennis Fithian today. What happened to Dennis? Well, a bunch of things happened to Dennis, to be honest. Number one, today is his birthday, so who knows, perhaps he's already halfway drunk. Number two, today is his wedding anniversary, so that puts him probably the other halfway drunk. You might be thinking to yourself, well, what about little itty-bitty Brian, the intern, Brian Jelinek? Well, he was supposed to have an added role today, but let's check out what he's saying. Boom, there's Brian via YouTube saying, Brian here coming from his phone in an internetless house. Up first, Chap, who's riding solo, discusses the new McVay Stafford bromance. That's correct. Little Brian told me about a half hour ago that he didn't have any internet at his house, and so that means it's difficult, if not impossible, for him to get on the show. I also tried a couple of other individuals to come in to be guest hosts, and perhaps they'll be able to come on for a show later on in the year. They're actually some of my college radio co-hosts, because we did an NBA show back when we were in college at Penn State. So I figured on a night like tonight, it would be the perfect night to have them make their debuts on the Fith chapter, but one of them couldn't get on. The other one initially said he could, but because of a work commitment, with him being in the media in New York City, they're having New York City's mayoral primaries tonight. He was overloaded with work for that. So it's just me solo. And one positive way to look at this is we're just cutting out all the dead weight. No Dennis Fithian, no little Brian, except for some of his comments that you'll see, like the one that I already showed. But if you're looking for just fresh faces, boom, you got it with me. As far as what we're going to be talking about in tonight's show, well, let me first thank all those who are listening to episode number 115. Thanks to those who are watching via YouTube, Facebook Live, and Twitch, and to those who are listening to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. For those of you who want to download the podcast, of course, it is available on the day of each show at approximately 11 o'clock. Make sure you like, subscribe, and to participate in each show by sending in your feedback via Facebook and via YouTube. I will be reading it throughout the course of tonight's show. And as for what we're going to be talking about during the show, let's take a look at tonight's book. And as you can see in the second chapter, I'm kind of hiding behind the little book there. In the second chapter, what's the verdict on Ben Simmons after his terrible playoff run, particularly his terrible series against the Hawks? Is it time for him to be put on the trade block in Philly? In the third chapter, the NBA Conference Finals are here. I'll give you my prediction for the Eastern Conference Finals, which doesn't start until tomorrow, and the Western Conference Finals, which strangely has their game 2 tonight before game 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals. In the fourth chapter, we're going to have live coverage of the 2021 NBA Draft Lottery. The lottery starts at 8:30. The Pistons are guaranteed to have a top 6 pick. They're probably not going to get around to the Pistons part of the lottery until after 8:45, but we'll have live coverage, and we'll let you know whether or not the Pistons got screwed out of a top 5 pick. The worst they could have is a number 6 pick in the draft, and a lot of the experts, including myself, believe that there's a big drop-off after the number 5 pick in the draft, so very critical for the rebuild of the Pistons and Troy Weaver's roster. And then in the 5th chapter, it is the major wager, where I will try to win you guys a little bit of money. And let me just say that this is not going to be my major wager, but I will say that I did, and I think it was the app for PointsBet, place a bet at plus 600 on the Pistons to get the number 3 pick in the draft. And I think the Pistons are going to get the number 3 pick. That doesn't mean I don't hope they get the number 1 or number 2 pick, but I think they're going to get the number 3 pick. And if they get it, I'll be pleased with that selection, or I'll be pleased with that with the way the lottery balls fell. And I'll be pleased because I'll be getting some extra money. So if you want to place a bet right now on an app like PointsBet, or I don't think they have it on FanDuel, but perhaps DraftKings, Fox Bet, some other betting apps, you can do so right now. But let's turn the page to the 1st chapter, and that takes us to some disappointing news and a very exciting night in the NBA, because we have to start off with comments about former same old Lions quarterback Matthew Stafford. He, of course, is now playing for the Rams, and his new coach has been just drooling all over Stafford. And a couple of weeks ago, when McVay was asked to give his thoughts on Stafford, McVay said, quote, "I think I've been very happy. Everybody says, man, you just seem like you're in a better mood this offseason. I say, you're damn right I am." And considering those comments are about Matthew Stafford, it makes you go, Then we've got another quote from the Twitter feed of Jay Glazer of Fox, and this tweet just came out yesterday. And as a matter of fact, let's see if we can put that tweet up on the screen so you guys can see it for yourself if you guys are watching tonight's show. 1, 2, 3, and boom, there we go. So the tweet says, for those of you that are listening on the podcast, Rams head coach Sean McVay on his new quarterback Matthew Stafford. Bro, this dude's a bad MFer. Whatever people say about him, as good as it can be, he's even better than advertised. So back-to-back comments by Sean McVay just drooling over his quarterback, Matthew Stafford. And it just, when I saw those comments, I started thinking, wow, those are loaded. And I think that even though he was speaking to the media and his intended audience was not just the media, but the fan base in the Los Angeles area, because, of course, he's the Rams head coach speaking to mostly Rams media, people here in Detroit hear those comments too, and they start thinking about the guy that they just lost in Matt Stafford and the guy that they're about to get in, or the guy that they just got via trade in Jared Goff. So basically the question that I have, and definitely want to get some of your feedback via Facebook and YouTube during tonight's show as we work our way up to the NBA Draft Lottery, is what do McVay's comments about Matthew Stafford say about himself, about Matt Stafford, and about Jared Goff? Because I think that it is pretty loaded. And when I'll start off with Sean McVay, because I think that what it shows about McVay is that his rift with Jared Goff last year was real. There was a lot of talk after the season ended about how the two were not getting along, and it was mostly Sean McVay just kind of beating down Jared Goff, not physically, but verbally, and putting him down and basically saying they didn't have a chance to win. There was an ESPN article that goes into greater depth than I have right now, but it was a fascinating article about how their previously strong connection just kind of disappeared over the last year or two, and it coincided with Jared Goff having poor performances over the last couple of years. But I think that when you have comments like that by Sean McVay, it shows that the rift that he had with Jared Goff is real. It suggests that his mood improved because his quarterback was no longer Jared Goff, and his quarterback now is Matthew Stafford. And it suggests that he's even relieved that his quarterback is not Jared Goff. So that's what I think it says about Sean McVay. With regards to Matthew Stafford, I think it suggests that he has been a clear upgrade on the Rams over Goff, at least when it comes to what he's seen in practice over the last couple of years. We know that on the field the last couple of years, while Matthew Stafford, I believe, is just a flat-out average quarterback, Jared Goff, who Pro Bowler, was not that the last couple of years. That's why you got Pro Football Focus saying he's not going to be a top 25 quarterback this year. That's why you got Chris Sims, whose opinion I value, saying that he's going to be the 31st best quarterback in the NFL in 2021. There was a big drop-off after the 2018 season. But when you got Sean McVay making these comments about how he's a bad MFer and he's been very happy, his mood is better, I think it suggests that McVay is seeing a clear upgrade. And for a lot of people out there who think that Stafford is a lot better than Jared Goff, Sean McVay is backing up that point. But when you think about that second quote, there's something in that too. When he says, bro, this dude's a bad MFer. Bad MFer, I think it could be taken as just, he's a very good player. But when you use the term bad MFer, you're also talking about an attitude. And I think it suggests that he's more intense than Jared Goff. And it suggests that perhaps Sean McVay was not pleased with the lack of intensity that Jared Goff showed over the last couple of years. And there's a stark contrast between that and what he sees right now out of Matt Stafford. And I think that lastly, when it comes to Stafford, it suggests that McVay is impressed by Stafford's arm strength, because we all know that whether you love Stafford or you hate Stafford, one of his greatest assets is his arm strength. He's got one of the strongest arms in the NFL and has ever since he joined the league. Before we get to what it means about Jared Goff, let's go to the comments. And here's one from Keith. It says, today is Dennis's birthday. He must be out celebrating. Happy birthday to Den. Yeah, it is Dennis's birthday. That's why he's not here. He's probably celebrating, but he has to share today with his wife because it's his anniversary as well. So, I mean, I'm not married. I've never been married, but I don't know if I would want to share my birthday with my future wife on our anniversary. And I don't think I would want to have us get married on her birthday either. I think it should be 3 separate days. Now, it does help if you're one of those folks who might be concerned that you're going to forget your wife's, you're going to forget your anniversary because it's on your birthday. It's a very important, it's a day you celebrated all your life. But I think it's kind of a questionable decision to get married on your birthday. Very questionable. And the good thing is, Dennis is not here to defend himself tonight. Also from Little Brian, his birthday being today is real alleged. Let's just go to Beth. Beth says, it may be more of a knock against Goff. Wait till the season starts and see how Stafford does. And Beth, it could be a knock against Jared Goff. And that's what I was going to get to as my final point with what those comments say about Stafford, McVay, and Goff. When it comes to Goff, I think it suggests that obviously Goff sucked for the Rams over the last year or two, and McVay was not going to hide that. He didn't hide that. Obviously, he wanted him shipped out of town along with multiple draft picks in order to get Matthew Stafford. But when you're going out there talking about how your mood is so much better than it was the previous offseason, and everybody can tell, and that's your response, your direct response into a question about how you feel about Matthew Stafford, it suggests that McVay dreaded coaching Goff last offseason, and the only reason to dread coaching Jared Goff, who didn't seem to be a guy that had issues with the law or was a bad influence in the locker room or his teammates didn't like him. The only reason to dread coaching Jared Goff, if you are the head coach of the Rams, is because you think he sucked. So that's not a good sign if you are a same old Lions fan. And when you look at the comment about Matthew Stafford being a bad MFer, and you juxtapose that with the guy who just left in Jared Goff, that suggests that Goff is not a bad MFer. And, you know, whether you love or you hate Matt Stafford, look, I was not a big Stafford slappy or anything like that. But I thought he was an average quarterback who was certainly tough. We all know that he never liked to come out of games and things like that. And I think that it's fair to say that Jared Goff is a tough guy as well, because he had surgery on his finger a week or two before the end of the season, and then he entered a playoff game as a backup and helped them to win that game. Now, he didn't light it up for 350 yards of the air, but he was able to come in to help lead his team to victory. So I don't know that he's not a bad MFer, but I think that from seeing Matt Stafford in his first decade plus in Detroit, it's clear that he's tough, and the label bad MFer would apply to him. Sean McVay obviously did not want to apply that label to Jared Goff. The other thing I'll say before we turn the pace of the second chapter is that you have to look at the stability of the coaching staffs as important in these comments as well. When you think about the Rams, they have the exact same coaching staff. So that means that Sean McVay can compare the quarterback that he just had and coached for multiple years to the new guy that he has in camp right now. Whereas you look at Anthony Lynn, the new offensive coordinator for the same old Lions, and Dan Campbell, the cannibalistic new head coach of the same old Lions, and they're coming from different organizations. Anthony Lynn is coming from the Chargers. Dan Campbell is coming from the Saints. So it wouldn't be fair for them to make a comment about the quarterback that just left Detroit because they never got a chance to coach Matthew Stafford. And it certainly wouldn't be fair to comment on Justin Herbert if you're Anthony Lynn, or Drew Brees if you are Dan Campbell. That's just not what they're So the point I'm making is, because the Rams are not going through a coaching change and the Lions are going through a coaching change, you're not going to have any similar comments coming from the Lions front office or the Lions coaching staff about, Jared Goff is a bad MFer. Or if you do have those comments, it would not be fair to compare them or to say that guy's making a comparison to Matthew Stafford. Additionally, look at the wide receiver room. We all know it sucks, but it's also been wiped out. So you're not going to be able to get any of the top wide receivers from last year, an Amendola, Marvin Jones, or a Galladay to talk about Jared Goff being a bad MFer, or he's better than advertised, or my mood's better or worse, or whatever the case may be, because all three of those guys are gone. All you got is TJ Hawkinson at tight end and Quintez Cephas at wide receiver. A couple more of your comments coming in. Here's one from Paul W. Brian Jelinek, I see Fith ATM is doing a live podcast with Chris Sims. I see Fith at the moment is doing a live podcast with Chris Sims. Yeah, the old birthday present. Is he? Is Dennis Fithian sneaking out to be on Chris Sims' podcast? I don't know if Dennis is that big of a big shot, but if so, I think that's a good reason to skip tonight's show, or at least come in late. Also from Keith, obviously gave up a lot for him, so I don't expect him to say anything different than being excited about Mr. Strong Arm Stafford, who was not very cerebral in reading defenses. Yeah, and it's easy to look great in training camp or in mini camp or in OTAs when we talk about practice. Not a game, we talking about practice. But we know that when it came to crunch time in games, sometimes Stafford was great, fourth quarter comebacks and all that. Sometimes he was throwing pick sixes and throwing for 30 yards in the fourth quarter. So we'll see if he's making similar comments about Stafford once the season starts. All right, don't forget, we're going to give you live coverage of the NBA Draft Lottery coming up in the fourth chapter. But now let's turn the page to the second chapter, and that takes us to Ben bleeping Simmons. Doc Rivers was asked about Ben Simmons after his poor series against the Atlanta Hawks, and how bad was it? Well, this star caliber player who's getting paid over $36 million per season on average over the next 4 seasons. He averaged 9.9 points per game. He scored 8 points or less in 4 of his 7 games against the Hawks. He shot 32.7% from the line. Everybody that was watching this series knows that Ben Simmons was the reason that they lost that game. They have an average guard in that situation, and they win. In the final 3 games of that series, check this stat out. He scored exactly 2 shots, or he made exactly 2 shots. But here is what Doc Rivers said after Game 7 when he was asked about the future of Ben Simmons and whether he could possibly be a starting guard on a championship level team. Boom and boom. Wait a second. There we go.
Hey, Doc, do you think Ben Simmons can still be a point guard for a championship team like the one you guys want to become?
Yeah, David, I don't know that question or the answer to that right now. So I don't know the answer to that.
That's not a lukewarm endorsement, because that's not an endorsement at all about your starting point guard saying, I don't know the answer to that. And so I think when it comes to Ben Simmons, that's got to make him feel awful about his future going forward. And obviously he can't feel good about the way he played in the Eastern Conference semis. And he even said after Game 7, quote, obviously I wasn't there. If I'm a 76ers fan and I hear Doc Rivers say, I don't know if he's a championship level guard, and I hear Ben Simmons say, obviously I wasn't there, you're thinking, wait a second, you were just there. You were just playing. You had 7 games to get yourself together, and you were getting worse as the series went on. You were bricking free throws. You were being taken out of games. You were making 2 shots a game, and now all you got to say is, obviously I wasn't there. The series just ended, and you weren't there. If I'm a Sixers fan, I'm saying, get Ben Simmons out of here. We got a process to complete. And the process was not getting to the second round of the Eastern Conference playoffs and losing to the 5-seeded Atlanta Hawks, who are led by a bunch of players with hardly any playoff experience. You're beaten by Trae Young, who's a great player, but no playoff experience coming into this year. You're beaten by Kevin Huerter, who I don't even remember him playing at Maryland, but he had a breakout series. They didn't have Cam Reddish. They didn't have DeAndre Hunter. They were missing not superstar players, but critical role players. And Ben Simmons couldn't come in there with Joel Embiid and lead them to a playoff series victory against the Atlanta Hawks when they had home court advantage. He helped lead them to a Game 1 and a Game 7 loss. If I'm a 76ers fan, I want him out. Philly needs to ship him out. Then when you think about where's a good place for him to go, well, he played poorly. He played soft. What's a soft team out there that might need an upgrade or a change the point guard position after the season is over? I know that his team just won a series over the weekend and won a Game 7, but Drew Holiday has been a big disappointment for the Milwaukee Bambies. Perhaps the Milwaukee Bambies say, hey, why don't we get rid of Drew Holiday and bring in a softy like Ben Simmons? We got enough. Think about it. They've already got enough shooters. They got plenty of shooters on the team. And I'm not talking about Giannis putting up 6-7 shots a game and making 1 from behind the arc. But they got Middleton. They got DiVincenzo. They got Brent Forbes. They got plenty of guys that can make threes. And with Giannis being able to take up some space driving the lane, I think that perhaps trading for Ben Simmons could be a decent move for them. It would certainly be a culture fit because he's a softie, and the Bucks are soft. That's why I call them the Milwaukee Bambies. But this is not going to work. I mean, from a skill standpoint, Ben Simmons can't shoot at all from the free throw line, and as the season wore on, he got worse. And as the season goes on, the pressure ratchets up. They were showing a stat, I believe, in Game 7 about how he was in the low to mid 60s in the first half of the season. And then he was under 60% in the second half of the season. And then he was shooting in the 40s in the playoffs. And he shot 32.7% in the Eastern Conference semifinals against the Hawks. So the more the pressure goes up, the worse Ben Simmons shoots. Considering over the next 4 years, he's going to average over $36 million per season. He's got to get his ass out of Philly if you're a Philly fan. You can't have that on your team when you're trying to compete from championships. So he can't shoot from the free throw line. He made his first three-point shot of his career earlier this year because he can't shoot threes. And from a mental standpoint, he's soft and getting rattled. He doesn't have the same type of mental ferocity that a Devin Booker or a Russell Westbrook or a late Kobe Bryant has. He's got the opposite of it. Once again, right after the playoffs ended, he said, and I quote, "Obviously, I wasn't there." Let's look at some of the feedback coming in. Let's go with this from Little Brian. Doc Rivers did coach a pretty egregious game. I understand their second best player, Seth Curry. Their second best player, Seth Curry, had foul trouble. But Curry being on the bench for 17 minutes is horrible. But look, Curry should not have been their second best player because he's been a solid role player all his career, and he really stepped it up. I mean, if it wasn't for him stepping up, this series could have been over before 7 games. But Steph Curry made himself some money in this series that the Sixers were counting on their $30+ million per year player to step up in the Eastern Conference semis, and he stepped down. And Steph Curry is not used to playing 40 minutes a night, so he needed some time to sit on the bench. Also, coming in via the feedback from Beth, it's time for them to trade Simmons. He can't shoot. If they want to win a title, they got to get someone to go with Embiid. Yes, Embiid is a Batman, and he was playing with a torn meniscus, and he was still putting up 30 and 40 points in an Eastern Conference semifinal series. What was Ben Simmons' injury excuse? Yeah, they need somebody that can shoot. Like, how many? When you think about the final 4 teams that are left, how many of those teams have a first or second best player who can't shoot? 0. Another comment coming in via YouTube from Keith. I'd take Simmons and I would try to lowball Philly for him. Still a lot to like about his game right now. Great defender, can handle the ball and play point, and is a tall point guard who, let's see, it continues, who they obviously did not get the best out of him or put him in position to get the best out of him. I think Cheney, I think it's supposed to be Casey, could coach him up and work on the shot. Dude's in his mid-20s and he still can't shoot. He's not in his mid-teens. He's in his mid-20s and he can't shoot. And once again, over the next 4 years, he's averaging over $36 million per year in salary. And you want to work on him starting to shoot the basketball when he's about to be making $36 million per year? Don't think so. That's not what I'm looking for. How about this from Sideshow Raj? Should the Pistons pursue Simmons? No. And obviously we'll have some more clarity on what the Pistons could do with their draft pick in the next, in less than half an hour. The NBA draft lottery is about to start. Of course, we're going to have live coverage right here on the Fifth Chapter. But I would rather have a backcourt for the next 3 years of Killian Hayes and Cade Cunningham, or Killian Hayes and Jalen Green, or Killian Hayes and Jalen Suggs, or Killian Hayes and Hamidou Diallo, assuming they end up picking somebody like Evan Mobley or Jonathan Kuminga, than I would Killian Hayes and Ben Simmons, or maybe Killian Hayes is in a trade deal to go back to Philly, because then you still don't have a guy that can that can score, and he's once again $36+ million per year, and you can't score? One of the biggest playoff series of your career, and you average less than 10 points a game? You made less than a third of your shots? I'm not trading for Ben Simmons. No way. Before we turn the page to the third chapter, let's get one more comment in here. How about this one from Keith? Simon says, talented, and hopefully he is hungry and can get the eye of the tiger, so to speak. It's not out of the realm of possibility. Oh, yeah, it's not out of the realm of possibility. But right now, Ben Simmons is not a championship level player. And the guy who just coached him, Doc Rivers, said, I don't know if he's a championship level point guard. He just said that. All right, so we got the NBA draft lottery that is starting momentarily, so we'll keep you abreast of that. But the Pistons are not if you've watched the draft lottery, you know how this stuff goes. They start off with the draft lottery show, and they show some ping pong balls. They show the guys that are projected to be at the top of the draft, and then they introduce you to all the different characters. Ben Walsh representing the Pistons and all this other stuff, and then they go from 14 to 5. And then they go to the top 4. So it's 8:31 right now, but they're probably not going to start drawing ping pong balls for another 10 to 15 minutes. And they're not going to get to the top 4 for another 20 minutes or so. So definitely make sure you stay tuned right here to the fifth chapter. We will keep you abreast of it as it goes pick by pick by pick. Let me get one more comment in the second chapter before we turn the page to the third chapter. It's from Roger, who says, I would give up Bey for Simmons. I wouldn't. I would not give up Saddiq Bey. Think a couple of reasons. Number one, the salary. Saddiq Bey is on a rookie deal and not even a lottery rookie deal. That's number one. Number two, think about the modern. There, now you can see. Number two, in the modern NBA, what's valued more? A guy that can drain it from downtown, like Saddiq Bey, who set the all-time record for three-pointers made as a rookie in just a 72-game season? Or Ben Simmons, who just showed his value by breaking everything in sight and being forced to be benched at times because he couldn't hit shots in the playoffs? I'm not giving up Saddiq Bey for Ben Simmons. He deserves to be a Bambi. A Milwaukee Bambi. All right, let's turn the page now to the third chapter. And that takes us to the NBA playoffs and the Eastern Conference Finals and the Western Conference Finals. In the Eastern Conference Finals, you've got the Milwaukee Bambis and the Atlanta Hawks. Game 1 in that series is tomorrow in Milwaukee. And then in the Western Conference Finals, we've got the Phoenix Suns and the LA Clippers. And you got Kawhi Leonard, who missed the first game of the season, is expected to miss tonight's game as well. You got Chris Paul, who missed game 1 of that series, expected to miss expected to miss game 2 as well. So you look at that and you see the best player for the Clippers is out again. The second best player for the Suns is out again. In that game 1, the Suns won 120-114 and took the 1-0 series lead. But I definitely want to get your thoughts on who you've got winning and advancing to the NBA Finals between the Bambis and the Hawks in the Eastern Conference, and then the Suns and the Clippers in the Western Conference. And I'll start off with the West. I've got the Suns winning this series in 5 games. And I don't feel very confident in that, despite the fact that I think it's going to be a quick series. And the reason is because there's so much uncertainty about the statuses of 2 of the top 4 players in this series. Kawhi Leonard, the best player on the Clippers, and perhaps the best player in the series when healthy. And then Chris Paul, the 3rd or 5th best player in this series, and the 2nd best player on his team. If both of these guys are out for the entirety of this series, then I think it's probably going to be Suns in 6, because I think that the Clippers are going to be able to take a couple of games, perhaps 2 games at home. But you have to think about how these two guys are out for different reasons. You look at the Kawhi Leonard issue, and it's a knee injury, and he's been dealing with knee injuries for years. So who knows when he's going to come back? I don't know when he's going to come back. I wouldn't be surprised if he's out for the entirety of this series, which means the entirety of the playoffs. When you look at Chris Paul, he's out due to coronavirus. He tested positive for coronavirus. Now, if he hadn't been vaccinated, you'd be thinking, all right, he's going to be out for a couple of weeks. But he has been vaccinated. Now, he still has to pass the same protocols in order to play. But when you've been vaccinated, that means you test positive for a shorter amount of time. And as long as he tests negative twice with 24 hours between two tests, then he can come back immediately after that second negative test. I think that because he started testing positive last week and he was vaccinated, there's a good chance that while he's not going to play today, he could be back for game 3 or game 4. And the quicker he's back, the quicker the Suns get an even bigger advantage in terms of talent, and they can take out a second team from Los Angeles. So I think that he probably will be back for the 3rd or 4th game of this series. And if the Clippers can't win today, or perhaps in game 3 with Chris Paul out, assuming he's out in game 3, then we're looking at a series where the Suns could take this in 4 or 5. On the other hand, if Chris Paul continues to test positive and Kawhi Leonard comes back in game 3 or game 4, this is the Clippers series. But as of right now, I expect CP3 to come back reasonably quickly in game 3 or game 4, and they'll win this series in 5. As for the Eastern Conference, and just so you guys know, I am keeping track of the NBA draft lottery, and they're not doing it. They're doing exactly what I said they were going to do in the first 10 minutes. They're just interviewing folks here. They're interviewing Hakeem Olajuwon. Hey, I guess that wouldn't be a good impersonation of Rachel Nichols. Hey, I'm Rachel Nichols. Hakeem, you got the best chance for the number 1 pick. Do you feel confident? Do you have a lucky charm? That's all they're doing right now. It's talking about, do you feel confident and do you have a lucky charm and who do you want your team to pick? But once they start going through from 14 all the way on up, we will take you, I will give you live coverage of that right here on the Fith chapter. As far as the Eastern Conference finals, which is the final series called by Marv Alberts in his play-by-play career, it's the Milwaukee Bambies, who have home court advantage as the 3 seed, against the 5-seeded Atlanta Hawks. And obviously I'm rooting for the Hawks. I am sick and tired of the Bambies. This is the 3rd year in a row. They've been very frustrating to watch in the playoffs. I knew they were, well, I had a strong feeling they were going to beat the Nets. But why did they beat the Nets? Not because they were better. They beat the Nets because the Nets were injury plagued. Now, it's not a surprise they were injury plagued because they were injury plagued throughout the course of the season. But had Kyrie Irving not turned his ankle, had James Harden not messed up his hamstring, that series would have been over in probably 5 games in favor of the Brooklyn Nets. The only reason the soft Milwaukee Bambies advance is because they're playing an injured team. And you could say the same thing in their first round series because the Miami Heat were not 100% healthy. They certainly didn't have Victor Oladipo. The Hawks are not healthy either. DeAndre Hunter missed all of last series. I don't know if he's coming back. Cam Reddish has not played the entirety of the playoffs. Not that those guys are on the same level as Victor Oladipo, Kyrie Irving, or James Harden, but they're decent pieces in a series that could be close. You want every single piece that you can have ready to go. And so on paper, the Bambies are the better team, and on paper, they should win in 5. But we know that the Bambies are not a team that you can look at and say, well, let's just only look at who's on the roster. Let's only look at what's on paper. They're going to win in 5, and let's move on. The Hawks have no shot. Especially considering the Hawks just knocked off the number 1 seed. You have to take in consideration the fact that the Bambies have struggled in the playoffs, and they've been so soft. And wait a second, are we going to No, the lottery order is not yet. It looks like the lottery order is going to be revealed in a couple of minutes. So stay tuned on the fifth chapter, and we'll take you to that in a couple of minutes. But I've got you have to consider the fact that they're soft, they're untrustworthy, they're aggravating to watch, and they play stupid basketball. And so I really hope that the Bambis get swept by the Hawks. I don't have faith that the Bambis are going to be able to stop Trae Young because he's really emerged into a star player in these playoffs. That said, the Hawks don't have an answer for Giannis. John Collins and Clint Capella, they struggled mightily against Joel Embiid in the first half of those games against the Sixers. And then Joel Embiid, perhaps because his knee got sore or perhaps because he got tired, he tailed off in the second half. Giannis doesn't do that. There's no answer in Capella or Collins for Giannis. Also, during the regular season, the Bambis won that series 2-1, and the Bambis scored over 120 points, or at least 120 points twice. The Bambis should win in 5, but they're so soft, so stupid, and so aggravating. I'm going to say Bambis in 7. As far as some of your comments coming in, let's take a look via Facebook and YouTube. Here's one from Little Brian Jelinek on the previous topic. I wouldn't want Simmons on the Pistons. He will eventually get paid, and I don't want the paycheck. Well, he's got a contract already. He's got 4 more years left on his current deal that's going to pay him an average of over $36 million per year. Also, how about this prediction from Little Brian? Suns in 5, Bambis in 6. I could see either one of those playing out. Here, how about this from Keith? I love Rachel Nichols, so fine. Well, if that's how you feel about Rachel Nichols, next time she's on the air, wait to see if she's waving her hands around, and if she's got a naked left ring finger, perhaps you shoot your shot. Here's a very interesting comment from Roger. This NBA Finals will have some of the worst ratings of all time. And obviously, the national media is going to be very concerned about this, and the East Coast media folks are going to be concerned about this too, because if you're from the big East Coast media, you want to see a big East Coast market like Boston, Philly, or New York in the playoffs, or you want to see superstars like LeBron James from a big West Coast market, or Stephen Curry from another big West Coast market. And this is going to be the first playoff or the first NBA Finals without LeBron or Stephen Curry since 2010. But I've actually been very, and I get that, for the casual fan, they might say, why am I going to watch the finals if LeBron is not in it? Why am I going to watch the finals if Stephen Curry is not in it? They're always in the finals. Embiid's not in it, and he was an MVP candidate. Joker is not in it, and he just won the MVP. Russell Westbrook has won MVPs. He's not in it. The Brooklyn Nets have all these star players, and they're not in it. Why am I going to watch? I understand that, but one of the other issues that a lot of folks have had with the NBA playoffs is that it seems like the number 1 seeds and the favorites always win. Well, the Lakers were a favorite. They're out. Both 1 seeds are out for the first time since the mid-90s before the conference championships. And with all these injuries, there's a heck of a lot of uncertainty. I think it makes it intriguing regardless of what other people are going to do, regardless of whether other people are going to watch or not. How about this one from Keith previewing the the 4th chapter? My guess, Pistons get number 2 pick. As long as they get a top 4 pick, I'm happy. Once again, my prediction is number 3, but I hope that Keith is correct. And once we get to the 4th chapter, which we'll get to in a matter of minutes, I'll break down my big board, which only has 5 players on it. How about this from Beth? I also have the Suns versus the Hawks. A lot of folk think the Greek Freak is a fraud. What do you think? I don't think it's a fraud, but I mean, if I'm a Bucks fan, I certainly would hope they would stop jacking up all those threes. And he needs some help. He's got some help, but he needs some help from a coaching standpoint, and they just can't be so soft as a team. I think he's a good player, and he's certainly an elite regular season player. And he's been a very good playoff player this year, but he's not been on par with Durant or LeBron or Michael Jordan in terms of playoff performances, but it's hard to be on that level. That's perhaps the next step for him. But you know what? Hey, the NBA draft lottery is about to start in earnest. It's 8:44, and Rachel Nichols is still talking to folks. She's now talking to Davion Mitchell of Baylor, who could be the anywhere from number 6 to the end of the lottery. But let's not screw around anymore. We know what we're all here for. We're all here for the NBA draft lottery. So let's turn the page to the 4th chapter. And that takes us to our live coverage of the NBA draft lottery. And this is a show in episode 115 that has scared a lot of folks from doing it. You don't see Dennis Fithian tonight. He had the excuse of it's his anniversary and it's his birthday on the same day. Little Brian Jelinek, you would think he would say, oh, I'm a little guy, I'm a little intern. This is an opportunity for me to expand my profile and be able to co-host the show with Big Brian for one show. Internet issues. Try to get a couple of my former radio colleagues from college to join me. They had some other issues to attend to tonight, but it's just me. We cut off all the fat, figuratively speaking, for tonight's show. Live coverage of the NBA draft lottery, and once they start picking up those cards, I'll tell you who they're picking. 14 through all the way to number 1, as right now Rachel Nichols is interviewing Evan Mobley. But I think it's important to first lay out the parameters and what you should be looking for today. And that is number 1, that because I almost call them the Lions, the Pistons had the second worst record in the NBA. They have a 14% chance to win the NBA draft lottery, and they are tied with the Houston Rockets, who had the worst record, and I believe it's either the Orlando Magic or the Oklahoma City Thunder. I'm sorry, it's the Orlando Magic. They're just showing it right here on the screen. Orlando Magic also have a 14% chance to win the number 1 pick. The Pistons have a 52.1% chance to get a top 4 pick, a 79.9% chance to get a top 5 pick, and a 20.1% chance to get the number 6 pick in the draft, a 0% chance of falling out of the top 6. That means they're guaranteed to have the highest pick they've had since they drafted Darko at number 2 back in 2003. But this is a 5-player draft when it comes to the top of the lottery. And my big board has Cade Cunningham, number 1, Jalen Green, a close number 2, Evan Mobley, number 3, Jalen Suggs, number 4, and Jonathan Kuminga, number 5. And the lottery is starting right now with the number 14 pick. It's going to go to the Golden State Warriors. So things are going as planned so far. But the key here for me initially is you don't want the Pistons to fall to number 6. All right, here we go. The number 13 pick, the Indiana Pacers. So the Pacers did not move up in the draft. With the number 12 pick in the draft, the San Antonio Spurs will be making the selection. So their managing partner, Peter Holt, didn't do anything to help out. Number 11 pick in the draft. Could we see a team move up? The Charlotte Hornets do not get another top 3 pick after taking LaMelo Ball last year. All right, we are getting into the top 10 where the New Orleans Pelicans will be selecting. So nobody has moved up so far. Number 9, if everything goes to chalk, would be the Sacramento Kings. You're hoping it's Kings. You don't want people to move up ahead of the Pistons. And it is the Kings. The Kings are number 9. So now we're looking at number 8. The Orlando Magic should be picking right here unless they move up. And at number 8, it is the Orlando Magic. Everything's going to chalk so far. The next couple of picks are huge. The Raptors should be at number 7 unless they move up. It looks like we don't have a pause. I thought we had a pause on the action. At number 7, we're hoping for Raptors here, and it's Golden State. So that means the Raptors have moved up into the top 4. At number 6, this is the first opportunity where we could see the Pistons, but we won't because only one team has moved up so far. That's excellent news. At number 6 is the Oklahoma City Thunder. So the Pistons are in the top 5. That's huge. How high will they go? Definitely don't want to see them here because I think there's also a gap between the 5th pick and the 4th pick. Here we go. The number 4 pick number 5 pick in the draft goes to, come on, not the Pistons. Not the Pistons, the Orlando Magic. The Pistons, breaking news, have a top 4 pick in the 2021 NBA draft. The Pistons have a top 4 pick. They have a shot. I told you guys that I predicted the Pistons would have the number 3 pick in the draft, and it looks like they're going to commercial break before they reveal the top 4. But this is huge. The worst case scenario was for the Pistons to get the number 6 pick, and they didn't get that. The second worst case scenario was getting the worst player in that top 5, which is most likely Jonathan Kuminga, who played in the G League. The Pistons have a top 4 pick, so they don't have to worry about getting him. And if let's say the Pistons get the 4th pick, if one of the top 3 teams takes Jonathan Kuminga, and they've still got one of those other guys that falls to them. But this is huge. Once again, my big board is number 1, Cade Cunningham, number 2, Jalen Green, and I think there's a closer gap between number 1 and 2 than there is between 2 and 3. Number 3, I've got Evan Mobley, and number 4, Jalen Suggs. If I am Troy Weaver, those are the 4 players that I'm considering right now as I wait for the final couple of minutes of this lottery to conclude, and we get to see who the Pistons are selecting. But this is huge. If you get Evan Mobley, you can pair him with Isaiah Stewart, and you've got yourself an awesome young front court for the future. If you get the number 1 pick, obviously you can put Cade Cunningham in that backcourt with Killian Hayes, or if he turns out to be a bust, maybe Hamidou Diallo. If you get Jalen Green, he's a guy that I'm very high on him. I'd be okay if they took him number 1 overall, although I prefer Cade Cunningham, but he is projected to be the best scorer in the draft. People are comparing him to Kobe Bryant, and if you watch highlights of him, he is outstanding when it comes to slashing down into the paint amongst the trees, avoiding getting his shot blocked, getting fouled, getting into and-one situations. He'd be huge as an alpha, as a starting shooting guard to pair alongside Killian Hayes. And then if they get Jalen Suggs, a combo guard. So he could play alongside Killian Hayes. If Hayes turns out to be a bust, he can run the point. If Hayes is sitting on the bench, he can run the point. But being in the top 4 is huge. There's a 52.1% chance they would get there, and now they are there. Let's throw some of your comments up as we wait for the final 4 to be revealed. Looks like Jelinek was revealing it one by one. Oh, no wonder there's so many comments here. Here we go. Jelinek tweeting or putting via YouTube, sweating. Yeah, this is reason to sweat. I haven't felt like this as a Pistons fan since 2003 when I was doing like a little high school internship for Channel, Channel 2. And I was in the newsroom or in the sports room when we found out that the Pistons were getting the number 2 pick. And we were excited because the Pistons were either going to take Darko Milicic or Carmelo Anthony. Also from Beth on Facebook, I got Green. Hey, I'd be okay with Jalen Green. And as a matter of fact, while we wait, let me share this with you guys because I put up a poll earlier today asking what the Pistons should do if they get the number 1 pick in the draft. And here we go. If the Pistons get the number 1 pick in the draft, there are only 2 options, Cade Cunningham or Jalen Green. Agree. And 50% said no, they must select Cade Cunningham. But 43.2% agreed with me that they must select between Cade Cunningham and Jalen Green. Hardly anybody said that they should consider Mobley or Suggs for the number 1 pick along with Cade Cunningham. So just wanted to throw that out there for you guys. And I think that now that we're in the top 4, assuming the Pistons don't get the number 1 pick, a lot of folks are going to be looking at some Jalen Green film in the coming month to get themselves familiar with his game, just in case the Pistons pick him, especially because when you look at the other guys that are projected to go in the top 3, Jalen Suggs is a household name. He played for number 1 Gonzaga, and they were in the championship game. Everybody knows what he can bring to the table. Cade Cunningham, all his games were on national TV. Everyone knows what he can bring to the table. And Evan Mobley, he got his team to the Elite Eight. A lot of folks who are watching the NCAA tournament know what he can bring to the table, but not as many people know about Jalen Green. And I think the more that hear about him, the more that see what he did with the G League Ignite team will be excited about him. But we are moments away from them going to the Final Four. Right now on ESPN, they got Cassidy Hubbard interviewing DeAndre Ayton, a previous number 1 overall pick in the draft, because of course, after the NBA draft lottery is Suns versus Clippers game 2. And just so you know, I did not bet on the point spread for my major wager. I did bet on the game, but I didn't use that for my major wager. But I did bet on a prop bet for this game. So there's a little hint for you coming up in the major wager. But the 4 teams that are in position to get the number 1 pick are the Rockets, Pistons, Raptors, and surprise, surprise, the Cavaliers. If the Cavs get the number 1 pick again, you know this is rigged. They already got LeBron James. They already got Anthony Bennett, who is one of the biggest draft busts of all time, if not the biggest draft bust of all time. Oh, here we go. Number 4 pick is the Toronto Raptors. Pistons are in the top 3. Here we go. Number 3 pick in the draft goes to the Cavaliers. Pistons are in the top 2. Pistons are in the top 2. The number 2 pick goes to the Rockets. The Pistons get the number 1 pick. The Pistons get the number 1 pick. The Pistons get the number 1. No. Pistons get the number 1 pick in the draft. The Pistons get the number 1 pick in the draft. Big Ben is celebrating. Cade Cunningham is coming to Detroit. No. Oh my gosh. Let's go. The Pistons are getting the number 1 pick in the draft. Wow. The Pistons have never moved up in the draft in the history of their franchise. Oh, hold on a second. Got Roger saying, is that a Rodney Stuckey jersey? Because I got the number 3. No, this is a big. Let's see if I can turn around. See that? I don't know if you guys can see that, but this is a big Ben Wallace jersey that I'm wearing. I don't know that it was a lucky charm because obviously Big Ben Wallace was the guy representing the Pistons tonight, and I'm wearing my Ben Wallace jersey without a T-shirt underneath or anything like that. I've always been, as a side note, I've always been disappointed at the guys the Pistons put forward when it comes to representing for the lottery. You got other teams that are putting up the children of the owner, or they're putting up a star player from the past. And what do the Pistons do? They usually put up their coach or their GM, which is boring and lame. And it ends up, not that there's like a direct correlation, but it ends up with them getting the 7th pick or the 11th pick or something like that. And they brought in my favorite Piston of all time, a legend who won a championship, Big Ben Wallace, and boom, the number 1 pick in the draft. And I'll put that tweet back up that I shared with you just a moment ago. Here we go. Now we've got a decision. Some people say there is no decision. You just take Cade Cunningham, and if they do that, I'm straight. I'm good with that. But I think that it makes sense to sit there and take a good look. Let me get this out of here. Take a good look at Jalen Green and decide between those 2. If they take Cade Cunningham, nobody's going to question it. If they take Jalen Green, some are going to say, "Hey, is Troy Weaver going to be trying to be the smartest guy in the room?" And they might just say, well, you know what? I trust Troy Weaver because of what he did with the 2020 draft and how we got two good players in the middle of the first round, and Killian Hayes, he's still a question mark. But whether they take Cade Cunningham or Jalen Green, let's go. Let's go. I mean, wow. The Pistons are getting the number one pick in the draft. They've never moved up in the history of the franchise in the draft. They've never moved up. When it came to the Darko pick, that wasn't their own pick that was moving up. That was the Memphis Grizzlies pick that moved up. But when it comes to the pick assigned to their own record, the Pistons have never moved up until now. And now the Pistons fans have a reason to dream and to believe that the end of this decade-plus long drought is over. I mean, if you're Cade Cunningham, hey, you know, my parents just sold their house, and so they're moving out this week. And I've been talking to them a lot about how the housing market is challenging right now. Cade, you're a millionaire. Come on over to Detroit. Don't waste time. Get on Zillow and start picking out some houses. You're a millionaire. Pick out a house. Let's go. But you think about the immediate future of this team. And I'll get to before we get to the immediate future of this team, let's get to some of the feedback, because a lot of you guys are excited for good reason. I'm excited. I thought they were good. I just wanted to be in the top four, somewhere in the top four. Keith says, hooray. Little Brian, let's effing go. From Paul W. This was only a test. The real lotto picks are about to start. LOL. This ain't no test. The Pistons hit the Powerball. Little Brian, I'm going to throw up in excitement. From Beth. Oops, here we go. From Beth. I trust in Troy Weaver. Whatever he does will be the right move for the Pistons. But can you imagine if we would have selected Halliburton? We would have had 3 rookies all on the all-rookie team. I'm not worried about the past. He may have screwed up that Killian Hayes pick, but Saban Lee in the second round is a solid player, especially for a second-round pick. Yahoo Sports just put out an article today on if they would have redrafted the 2020 draft, and they said Sadiq Bey would have been the number 6 pick. I'm sorry, the number 7 pick going to the Pistons instead of Killian Hayes, and Isaiah Stewart would have been the number 5 pick. They were both drafted in the teens. Troy Weaver did a nice job with that draft, even though the first pick that he had in the lottery is a question mark right now. But if he drafts either Cade Cunningham or Jalen Green, it's a hit. Buzzy, number 1 pick. Yes. As we look forward, I'm not even going to look forward to 3-4 years down the line. I'm looking forward to the 2021-2022 season. And I'm going to leave Jalen Green out of this for a moment, because I think that the margin between Jalen Green and Cade Cunningham is small. And like I said, I'd be comfortable with either one of those 2 players getting picked at number 1 overall. But the consensus is Cade Cunningham number 1. So let's stick with that. If the Pistons select Cade Cunningham number 1 overall, you got a starting lineup of point guard Killian Hayes at 6'5", shooting guard Cade Cunningham at 6'8", small forward Sadiq Bey, power forward Jeremy Grant, and hopefully he can stay healthier than he did at the end of this past year, when perhaps he was just trying to get hurt to help the Pistons tank a little bit to get their number 1 pick. But Jeremy Grant at the 4. And then at the 5, you're going to have Isaiah Stewart starting with Mason Plumlee coming off the bench. When you consider that the Pistons had the second worst record in the NBA this past year, but if you look at their point differential, They were, I think, the 6th or 7th worst in the NBA. That suggests that they were better than their record suggests that they were. A lot of you guys that were betting on Pistons games might have been frustrated that the Pistons continued to cover the spread in a lot of these games that they were losing. I think that drafting Cade Cunningham, thanks to this lottery luck, suggests that the Pistons and their fan base can expect, at the very least, in year 1 of the Cade Cunningham era and year 2 of the Troy Weaver era, to be in the play-in tournament. Assuming the play-in tournament comes, I'm saying play-in tournament at the worst. Assuming the play-in tournament is back for the 2022 NBA playoffs, and assuming the Pistons aren't wrecked by a barrage of injuries, the expectation should be the Pistons in at least the playoff tournament or the play-in tournament. They have to be a top 10 seed in the Eastern Conference. The Eastern Conference, I mean, let me pull up the standings from last year just so I can take a look at how much ground they would have to make up just to get into the play-in tournament. So the Pistons last year, and I'll put the standings up so that everybody can see them as well. Let me share the screen with all you guys. Boom, 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 and boom. The Pistons were way, way, way down there. Worst record in the Eastern Conference of 20-52. They were 13 games out of the play-in game where the Charlotte Hornets played the Boston Celtics. Can they win 13, 14, 15 more games than last year? Although it'd be an 82-game season, but can they get to a top 10 team in the Eastern Conference? I think that's reasonable, and I think that should be the expectation going into the 2021-2022 season. Think about the improvements that the 2 middle first-round picks made throughout the course of the season. Saddiq Bey wasn't playing a whole lot, was a starter at the end of the year, made the most threes in NBA history for a rookie, and was scoring in the teens per game by the end of the year. So you've got that as a solid scorer. If he continues to improve, I'm not saying he's going to put up 25 a game, but a sharpshooter who could put up at least 15 a game for a season, that's a piece. You look at Isaiah Stewart, and if he continues to progress the way that he progressed throughout the course of the season, he will surpass Mason Plumlee, who was solid, had a triple-double for what it's worth, but was a solid pickup for Troy Weaver. And all of a sudden, you got Mason Plumlee coming off the bench for a guy in Isaiah Stewart, who's looking like he has the ability to be a more offensively minded Ben Wallace. He can shoot threes. He was stepping out and hitting threes at the end of the year last year. He was putting up 10 points and getting 10 boards in games. Killian Hayes, we'll see. I mean, dude shoots like Ben Simmons. You know from earlier in the show what I think about Ben Simmons, but Killian Hayes played, about 20 games this year, so there's still an opportunity for him to improve. Jeremy Grant in his second year in Dwayne Casey's system. And then you add in Cade Cunningham. This is a guy who is going to be in contention for the Rookie of the Year. You have to expect that he's going to be on the all-rookie first team, even if he disappoints a little bit. And I would expect him as a rookie to average 15 points a game. As a rookie to average at least 5 assists per game. 15 and 5 into your starting lineup. Look, this is not right here, right now, an NBA title contender. It's not a team that's going to contend for home court in the first round with the Brooklyn Nets, the Milwaukee Bambies, the Philadelphia 76ers, the New York Knicks, who had it this year, the Hawks, who are going to be favored to do so next year, the Miami Heat, who are going to have a good chance to be in that top 4 next year, teams like that, or even the Boston Celtics if they make a big surge. But you got to take it step by step. And the Pistons made a nice step forward by fading for Cade all year long. They made a nice step forward by having the targeted free agent signings particularly the guys coming over from Denver and Mason Plumlee, and more importantly, Jeremy Grant when he was healthy. This has a chance to, in year one, get Pistons fans thinking about the playoffs. And then you think about year two. Well, you know what? Let's fast forward to year three. And why do I say year three? Because you can see what one great draft can do in year three when you look at the Atlanta Hawks. Trae Young is in his third year with the Atlanta Hawks. He's the best player on that team. He plays guard just like Cade Cunningham. He led them to the Eastern Conference Finals in his third year. The Hawks sucked 3 years ago. And now they're in the Eastern Conference Finals. It took some luck, but they're in the Eastern Conference Finals. And if you just want to look at regular season success, in their third year with Trae Young, they were a 5 seed. But it wasn't just Trae Young. Kevin Huerter was a guy that nobody was talking about coming out of Maryland. And, I mean, he was like Pippen to Trae Young's Jordan in Game 6 and Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Semis against Philly. He's in his third year with the Sixers as well. Now, the Cam Reddish pick hasn't panned out all that well, but let's fast forward to year 3 of Cade Cunningham. That's going to be year 4 of Killian Hayes, year 4 of Sadiq Bey, and year 4 of Isaiah Stewart. Year 4 of those guys, and year 3 of Cade Cunningham. Think about what the Pistons could accomplish in the 2024 playoffs, assuming that all those guys are still on the team, once the Blake Griffin money is wiped off the books. I mean, that's huge. Blake Griffin took a buyout so that I believe next year the Pistons don't have as much money tied to him. But once his money is completely wiped off the books, they can be big spenders in free agency. By next offseason, Jeremy Grant will be going into the final year of his contract, only $20 million per year. Cade Cunningham will be on his rookie deal. Killian Hayes, rookie deal. Isaiah Stewart, rookie deal. Sadiq Bey, rookie deal. 4 key players on their rookie deals. And Jeremy Grant going into the final year of his deal, making $20 million a year. Maybe you're ready to extend him, but you're also ready to hit the free agent market. Now, nobody ever comes to Detroit. Nobody ever wants to sign with Detroit and become and take their money when they can go to Miami, or they can go to Golden State, or they can go to LA, or they can go to Brooklyn, because Detroit's not a tourist destination. But if Cade Cunningham wins the Rookie of the Year, if Sadiq Bey is an all-star snub, if Isaiah Stewart is a snub for the all-defensive team or something like that, or all-defensive second team, and the Pistons get into the playoffs as, let's say, a 7 seed, and they win a couple of games, Pistons are on the rise. And perhaps they can get someone to sign and take their money in free agency. This is as exciting as it gets if you're a Pistons fan. The number 1 pick in the draft. I mean, you look at what's going on in Detroit sports. It's been a tough last several years. The Lions are still going nowhere. They got a new regime, but we know they're going to win about 2-3 games in 2021. But the Red Wings, they're starting to move up. They had even though they still suck, they went from being the worst franchise in all of sports to being just a bad hockey team. And everyone seems to love all these picks by Steve Yzerman, especially the defensive picks. They're on the rise. I don't trust Al Avila. I think he should be fired, and the Tigers are not going to be a winning team until after he's gone. But Spencer Torkelson is making waves. Dylan Dingler making waves. Riley Green, not so great so far, but he's in Double-A. And then Skubal and Mize are young guys that are making a real significant impact this year. Tigers they have a glass ceiling with Al Avila, but they're rising a little bit. Not the worst team in baseball, not the Pirates or the D-backs. And then the Pistons. They had that awesome week last year where they made 20 some odd deals. They tanked the right way to get the number 1 pick. They're on the rise. A couple years from now, the Detroit sports landscape could look a lot different than it does right now. And the Pistons tonight are going to be a part of it. I think it's close. They could take either Jalen Green or Cade Cunningham, and I'd be fine with that. You have to assume they're going to take Cade Cunningham. They faded for Cade, and this is a great day in Detroit sports history. All right, let's turn the page to the 5th chapter, and that takes us to the major wager. You got the I think the NBA playoff game already started. I was so excited that I knocked my phone off my my little desk in here. But no, the playoff game has not started yet. But just a reminder, on Thursday, I selected. What did I select on Thursday with my major wager? I selected the Angels -3.5 in the first 5 innings. Against the Tigers. And the reason I did that was because of the pitching matchup. It was Matt Manning versus Shohei Ohtani. Matt Manning was making his debut, his major league debut, and Shohei Ohtani just, he just goes out there and kills everybody. But the Angels only won the first 5 innings by 1 run, so that was a loss. As far as tonight is concerned, and there's not much time for you guys to get this in. In fact, the game might have started if there's a delay. But I'm going with Reggie Jackson to score over 18.5 points. Kawhi Leonard is still out, so the Clippers need a number 2 scoring option. It's not going to be Terrence Mann or Marcus Morris. Jackson had 24 points in game 1, which is well over 18.5. Chris Paul is still out, which means that he can't play defense on Reggie, and it'll be more Cameron Payne. I'm taking the over on Reggie Jackson's 18.5 points. But I mean, the real story of tonight is the Pistons. It's the Pistons. They land the number 1 pick in the draft. I just wanted them to be in the top 5 and then be in the top 4, and anything after that was gravy. And here we are, number 1 pick in the draft. It might even be a foregone conclusion. Either way, the Pistons are rising. The Pistons are back. Hopefully on Tuesday, Dennis will be back so we can have more comprehensive coverage of the Pistons landing the number 1 pick. Until then, I am Brian Chapman. This is the 5th chapter. See you on Tuesday and celebrate that number 1 pick. Let's go. He represents the mitten by way of Penn State. When Chapman gets to talking sports, the people can't wait. He represents the mitten. Be a true EMU, but cut Dennis in the fall, and his veins bleeding blue. They got respect around the state. When that light turns red, so don't sleep on these dudes. Just invite your friends to cut your nap short and tip your cap for and sit back for the 5th chapter. Brian Chapman. Dennis Fithian. When they open their mouths, they spit in the facts, bro. This ain't even optional, man. You just have to tune into YouTube to watch the broadcast or download it to your phone to peep the podcast. They mix laughter, they get after. It's all captured in the 5th chapter.